Hello children, now we move on to our next lesson, Jane Eyre at Lowood Institution. The author of the story is Charlotte Bronte. Charlotte Bronte was an English novelist and poet. Her best known story is Jane Eyre. When Charlotte was a young girl, she had attended a very low school. The food was unattractive, the discipline was very harsh, and the fees was also very low. She condemned her school in this story of Jane Eyre as a school in Lowood Institution. In this story, Charlotte has described a part of her life also. Let me tell you the story of Jane Eyre in brief. Jane Eyre was a young girl. She was an orphan. Mrs. Reed was a cruel aunt. Mrs. Reed puts her in Lowood Institution. It was a charity school maintained by some people for the orphans. Mr. Lloyd had suggested Mrs. Reed to put her in that school. Mrs. Temple was the superintendent of the school. She was a very kind lady. Jane had only one understanding friend, and that was Helen Burns. Mr. Brocklehurst was the financial manager of Lowood Institutions. He was a friend of Mrs. Reed, Jane's aunt. Mrs. Reed had told Brocklehurst that Jane was a liar. One day in the school, Jane by mistake drops her slate. Mr. Brocklehurst becomes very angry. He tells that Jane is a careless girl. He orders Jane to stand on a stool and tells the others that she is a liar. He also instructs the other students not to speak to her for the rest of the day. Only Helen Burns supports her. By 5 o'clock, all the kids leave the classroom. Jane, who was punished, collapses on the floor. Jane is deeply ashamed. She feels her reputation is ruined. She feels very dejected. Helen tries to console her, and she tells that her friends only pity her. Miss Temple calls Jane and Helen to her room and asks the reason. She wants to know why Jane is crying so badly. Jane tells Miss Temple about her disturbed childhood and her cruel aunt. Miss Temple asks Mr. Lloyd and confirms Jane's side of story. Miss Temple clears Jane of her accusations that Mr. Brocklehurst had made against her. This is the basic story in short. This lesson, Jane Eyre at Lowood Institution, is a part of the main story. Now tell me, children, how will you feel when if you are accused of something which you have not done? Somebody calls you a liar. How will you feel, children? You'll feel very sad, isn't it? You'll feel depressed, sad. You feel dejected. So all these feelings of a young child is shown in this story. For your convenience, this lesson is divided into 3 modules. The first module is from the beginning of the lesson to page number 51, second paragraph, that is, till the middle of the page. The second module is from page 51, third paragraph, that is from the middle of the page to page number 53, the second last paragraph. And the third module is from the last paragraph of page number 53 till the end of the story. Here, in this story, wherever they have used the word I, me, or my, it refers to Jane Eyre. Is it clear? Now I am going to read the lesson. Look into your books, children, page number 49. Jane Eyre at Lowood Institution. Ere the half hour ended, 5 o'clock struck, school was dismissed, and everyone went in to have tea. It was deep dusk. I retired into a corner and sat down on the floor. The spell by which I had been so far supported began to dissolve. Reaction took place, and soon so overwhelming was the grief that seized me that I sank prostrate. With my face to the ground, now I wept. Helen Burns was not here. Nothing sustained me. Left to myself, I abandoned myself, and my tears watered the boards. Here, the meaning of the word "ere" is before. The meaning of the word dismissed is got over. Second line, dusk means evening time. The word retired means moved, to move. In the last sentence, overwhelming means too much, great. Grief means pain. The word seized means caught. And sank prostrate means to lie flat with one's face down. The word abandoned means to let herself cry, to give the freedom to cry loudly. Now, in this paragraph, children, Jane is saying that before half an hour ended, the clock struck. It was 5 o'clock, and the school got over. I told you, children, that she was punished by Mr. Brocklehurst. She had a cruel aunt, and this is a classroom scene. When the bell rang, it was 5 o'clock in the evening. The school got over, and everybody went to have tea. She moved to a corner and sat down. Till now, Jane Eyre had somehow tried to manage or control herself, her feelings. But now her sorrow was so great that she was caught by the sorrow, and she was lying flat with her face down on the ground. She cried. She cried her heart out. Helen Burns, her kind friend, was not there, so nobody was there to stop her from crying. And she cried bitterly. Tears were just rolling down her cheek. The second paragraph, I had meant to be so good and to do so much at Lowood, to make so many friends, to earn respect and win affection. Already I had made visible progress. That very morning I had reached the head of my class. Miss Miller had praised me warmly. Miss Temple had smiled approvingly. She had promised to teach me drawing and to even let me learn French. I was also well received by my fellow pupils and treated as an equal by those of my own age. Now, here I lay, again crushed and trodden on. Would I rise ever again? So here she's telling her feelings. Okay, the word in the second sentence, win affection, means love and friendly behavior, the love and friendly love of the friends. In the fifth sentence, there's a word approvingly. The word approvingly means encouragingly. The words crushed and trodden means to be trampled by someone. Now, in the second paragraph, she recalled how she had tried to be so good. She had really worked hard. She really worked hard to get good friends and to earn the respect and to win the love and affection of her friends. She was happy with the way things were progressing in her school life. That day morning itself, she reached school early. Miss Miller, a teacher, had praised her. Miss Temple, the superintendent of the school, had smiled at her encouragingly. Miss Temple even promised her to teach drawing, and she allowed Jane to learn French. Her classmates and friends received her happily, and she was treated with respect by her peer group. She was happy. She had a sad background earlier, but now she felt very happy here. But these false accusations had really hurt her feelings. She was broken. Her happiness was short lived, isn't it? She was scared. She may not be able to rise up again. That is what she felt. She was not sure whether she would be able to survive here. This paragraph is about her feeling, how she's feeling. She had happily entered the school. Now she's feeling so sad, depressed. Now, the third paragraph. Never I thought and ardently wished to die. As I was sobbing, someone approached. I started up. The fading fires showed Helen Burns coming up the long, vacant room. She had brought my coffee and bread. So as she was sitting and crying, she was feeling very bad, isn't it? She was sitting, feeling and crying. She felt that she will never be able to survive here. So very strongly, she wished to die. As she continued to cry, she felt someone was approaching her. So she looked up. In the light of the fireplace, she saw her friend, Helen Burns, was coming in that long, empty room. She had brought her coffee and bread. It was tea time, isn't it? The word ardently means very strongly. The word sobbing means to cry. The words fading fires means in the light of the fire. Now I move on to the next paragraph. Come eat something, she said, but I put both away, feeling as if a drop or a crumb would choke me. I continued to weep aloud. Helen sat down on the ground near me, embraced her knees with her arms, and rested her head upon them and sat silently. I was the first who spoke. Helen, why do you stay with a girl whom everybody believes to be a liar? Everybody, Jane? Why? There are only 80 people who have heard you call so, and the world contains hundreds of millions. But what have I to do with millions? The 80 I know despise me. Jane, you are mistaken. Probably not one in the school either despises or dislikes you. Many, I am sure, pity you much. How can they pity me after what Mr. Brocklehurst has said? Now here, Helen is asking Jane to eat something. But Jane was not feeling hungry. She felt angry, helpless, and so she refused to drink the coffee and eat the bread. She was crying. She felt even a drop of coffee or a crumb of bread would choke her. So she continued to cry loudly. Now Helen is a patient girl, a very kind girl she is. She tried to calm Jane and she sat down patiently, silently, without uttering a word. Anyone else could have forced Jane to eat, isn't it? But Helen didn't do that. She just came and sat quietly. At times, silence is the best medicine. When both of them were sitting quietly, it was Jane who spoke first. She asked Helen, why does she stay with a girl whom everyone believes to be a liar? Jane is actually asking Helen, why does she prefer to stay with her, that is Jane, as everybody must be feeling that Jane is a liar. See how matured Helen is, children. What does Helen say? How can you say everybody? There were only 80 students in the class that time when she was called liar. And the world is made up of millions of people, isn't it? But Jane is sad. She's in no mood to listen to all this. For her, this 80 students meant everything. So she says that she has nothing to do with those millions of people. Only those 80 whom she knows must be thinking low about her. They will look down upon her. Jane feels her classmates will no longer like her. Then Helen makes her realize that no one in that school dislikes her or neither anyone looks down upon her. But many of them must be feeling pity for her. But Jane is not ready to believe all this, okay? So she's asking, how can they pity her after they heard what Mr. Brocklehurst had said about her? She's feeling others must be thinking that she's a liar. She's very sad and disturbed. So only negative thoughts are coming in her mind, children. Now I come to the end of the first module.